Good afternoon, Mr. Shamik.
Good afternoon.
Um, my name is Anibaba Fatima, and I'm an interview journalist with Prudence Journal. Can we get to know you, sir?
Hello, Fatima. Lovely to meet you. And thank you very much to Prudence Journal for having me today. So my name's Shamake Abiyan. I'm a British Somalilander living in London. I'm not only a political analyst who specializes in the Horn of Africa, but I'm also actually an activist who pushes for the re-recognition of the Republic of Somaliland.
It's good to have you here.
Thank you.
Can you give a brief overview of the political and security tensions between Somalia and Somaliland?
The government of Somalia on multiple occasions openly declared that it will recruit, arm, fund, and deploy warlords and mercenaries in Somaliland to cause instability in the country. They recognize that the re-recognition of Somaliland is imminent, and they have basically thrown the proverbial kitchen sink at the situation, spending millions in pushing propaganda and disinformation to hide our history and to attempt to delegitimize Somaliland. Somalia is a net exporter of instability and terror in the region. Somalia is unfortunately the poster child today for things like Al-Shabaab, piracy, instability, whereas Somaliland is considered a beacon of hope and freedom in a difficult region. Somaliland actually spends the majority of its tax collected budget on maintaining peace and security, not only within its borders, but actually Somaliland works with its neighbors, Ethiopia and Djibouti as well, to ensure stability in the region.
So, what can you say are the key arguments Somaliland makes for international recognition as a self-declared independent state? And what are their main challenges?
Fantastic question, Fatima. Thank you very much. It's a case of actually, where do I start? I don't have much time, so I'll give you another flavor here. Somaliland has a raft of both legal and moral arguments, which makes its case so strong and unique and compelling. The African Union fact-finding mission in 2005 found this as well, and said actually Somaliland's case is a special case. It won't open up a Pandora's box of other countries or splitting, because Somaliland is not a secessionist state. Somaliland is a sovereign de jure state. Somaliland's government essentially approved an act of union which was agreed with the UN trusteeship. But then Somalia Italiana did what I call an Italian job on the act of union and actually passed a sham document which wasn't the one that was agreed between the two, thus essentially making the act of union null and void and illegal. These tactics were actually so common for them because it was taught to them by the fascist Italian government who colonized Somalia prior to becoming a UN trusteeship in the 50s. Also, it's important to note that this was confirmed by both the British at the time as well as in a court of law in Somalia itself, where a judge claimed that soldiers who mutinied could not be sentenced because there was no act of union between the two countries. I think that's a really interesting point there. So legally, the case is very strong. Then there was, I touched upon a little bit, a lawful liberation movement, which managed to oust the genocidal dictatorship on 18th of May 1991. This dictator came to power in the late 1960s, very shortly after the independence of Somaliland, as I mentioned. Thus, actually, it respects the African Union Charter, which says that all members pledge to respect the borders existing on their achievement of independence. And as I said, this was backed by the AU itself in 2005. There was a sham, null and void act of union with Somalia. Somaliland's people suffered a genocide at the hands of a brutal dictator. until they lawfully liberated themselves. And for the past 34 years, Somaliland has been a stable and flourishing democracy, boasting sub-Saharan Africa's most efficient port, not according to me or according to Somaliland, according to the World Bank. Somaliland also boasts a ranking as the freest and most democratic country in the Horn of Africa. Again, not according to me, but according to Freedom House. So I think this is the case that really draws so many to support Somaliland, because as I said, it's not just moral, it's not just the right thing to do, but actually it's legally sound as well.
What can you say are the main points of tension between the two regions?
Fatima, I think the one thing that I just have to point out here, they're not two regions. Somaliland is a independent state. It's a de jure state, legally speaking. Somaliland is a sovereign. It enters into agreements with whomever it wishes. But essentially, the main point of tension is that Somalia has lied to the world since the 1960s, and it claims Somaliland.
Thank you. About the activities of militant groups like Al-Shabaab, how effective have counterterrorism efforts been?
Not effective at all. Actually, a lot of analysts go even further and say it's been a complete and utter failure. All indicators are now actually pointing to the fact that despite the billions spent on securing Somalia, Al-Shabaab has recently recovered any small gains made by the government, the provisional government, as well as now becoming more effective and brazen. This probably gives us an indication as to why Al-Shabaab are so brazen and able to circumvent the security apparatus in Somalia and carry out terrorist activity at will. And actually, now many security analysts who actually specialize in the region state that once the African Union troops leave Somalia, it will become the next Afghanistan.
Are there any prospects or proposals being considered for a negotiated settlement or reconciliation between both parties? And what are the prerequisites for that?
Thank you, Fatima. I think that's a very good question. And I think a lot of people do ask it. But I think maybe a lot of people ask it before really understanding what's happened. One cannot demand a people to negotiate with those who committed genocide against them. And yes, many of those individuals involved in that genocide are still alive, well, and active in politics in Somalia today. Secondly, even though this is the case, successive governments in Somaliland have actually attempted in good faith to carry out negotiations with Somalia. This has spanned over 12 years of talks with over 9 agreements between Somaliland and Somalia. But they've been consistently broken by Somalia. Somalia is not, unfortunately, a rational, stable actor which one can negotiate with. So earlier this year, Somaliland made it clear that they will no longer be engaging in any talks with Somalia because nothing will come out of it.
Thank you, Mr. Shamek. What are the key interests and concerns of various actors like the African Union regarding the conflict from a regional perspective?
So I've briefly mentioned, the African Union fact-finding mission in 2005 earlier, which confirmed Somaliland's, a special case in Africa, and it won't open a Pandora's box. And I think many African countries actually do understand this because Somaliland's history is actually very rich, and we've had relationships with actually many of these politicians today who run African countries, who are leaders of African countries. For now, though, the most important change with regards to, I guess, the re-recognition of Somaliland is that on the 1st of January 2024, Somaliland signed an MOU with Ethiopia, which states that Ethiopia will re-recognize Somaliland. Work has been underway since then with regards to the comprehensive technical negotiations as the two states will, expand their already existing economic and security cooperation even further. So we hope to see, the fruits of that labor very soon. And it's now reported that actually multiple African countries, as well as others, are ready to re-recognize Somaliland. However, some actors, unfortunately, will require more time due to their personal interests. For example, Egypt. Egypt's determined to use Somaliland as a proxy to counter Ethiopia in the region, as they've been at loggerheads in recent times due to, in my opinion, the fantastic dam that was built on the River Nile. Egypt, not so long ago, was pushing for a military base in Somaliland, but Somaliland rejected that and said it wants no involvement in this proxy war with its neighbor. It wants to maintain, the good relationships that we have. Djibouti is worried that a flourishing Somaliland will outshine it and thus take a significant chunk of the $1.5 billion it receives from Ethiopia in order to use its port. However, all that is needed here, in my opinion, is a mindset shift. As I have said for a long time, it's about time us Africans see other Africans not as binary opposites. We need to stop seeing this world as a zero-sum game. And that is, if I win, you lose. If you lose, I win. What we need to do is actually see the benefits of cooperation, of competition, of partnership, of integration, because we will develop much faster and better if we welcome this competition, but also work together in the same way that Somaliland and Ethiopia are proposing. This deal is expected to be groundbreaking, based on African solutions to African problems, and a deal which really thinks about how both countries can mutually benefit. And I think I can't wait to hopefully see the fruits of that labor, as I said, Fatima. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe that covers the key topics I wanted to discuss with you today. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your insights and perspectives. And before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to add or clarify?
No, Fatima, I think that's it. I think I've touched on some heavy detail there. But I think what I've tried to do is give a flavor so people can actually, Google as much as possible and search on the internet, because there's just so much there. So hopefully that was, enlightening. So thank you very much to yourself, Fatima, and thank you very much to Prudence Journal for having me as well.
It's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.